Hi, I'm Jessica Rector, your host and founder of This Man Thing, where we help men be a truer, better version of themselves and stand in their unique power to gain more freedom, confidence, and success. You can find out about us at thismanthing.com, and you can also join our free Facebook group at thismanthing.com/groups, where men are having real conversations and building much needed community support and camaraderie with other men. My guest today is Jim Burgoon. He's a virtual coach who wants to add value to people who are looking to win in life by finding health and wholeness in their relationships, leadership, and faith. In addition to coaching, he's a pastor, speaker, and blogger. Please help me give a big warm welcome to Jim. Woo-hoo! Thanks for being here, Jim.
Well, thanks for having me. I so appreciate you bringing me on the show today.
We can't wait to hear all the juiciness you're going to share. So tell us a little bit about you and really kind of what led you on the journey that you've been on.
Well, just real quick, I'm from Philadelphia. I now live in South Florida, which is nicer because it's warmer here. And what really led me is I grew up pretty rough. And, I've had people that's been through a lot of abuse, been through a lot of different things. So my whole life has been wrapped around trying to help people get over that. I got into ministry to help people. I started blogging, started writing. That's even what Soul Care is about, is trying to help people just get through their emotional trouble to live the best that they can live at and win it every day.
Wow. So how do people start to get over their emotional trouble? Like, what does that look like? What is really kind of emotional trouble? What does that mean? And how do people, what are steps, or what can they do to get over? I don't want to say get over it, because I don't know if it's something you ever really necessarily get over. I don't know if I believe that, but how can they start to heal and mend?
Well, interesting enough, and we all deal with insecurities, inferiority, and all those things. And one of the things that I always tell people, it's you're growing through it. It's not suddenly you wake up and you drop it. You have to grow through it. And the deal is with that is you first got to recognize it. You got to say, I'm having this issue. And many of us don't even recognize that we have these things that we're dealing with. And all of our relationships, whether good or bad, the subcurrent below it is our emotional damage. So we've got to first recognize our emotional damage and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. If you can't recognize your own, then you've got to get somebody you really, really trust that has your best interest at heart and say, hey, tell me about this. Give me some accountability. Give me some insight. What am I dealing with here that you see that I can't see? Yeah. And I think if you do those first two steps and you start with those, with the first self perspective, and then you get somebody else to look at another perspective, you can start saying, here's where my damage areas are. And here's what I can start to do to heal it, because I can get different, what do we call it? Different strategies and different things to do that, whether it be therapy, whether it be certain things like I'm a faith-based guy, certain Bible scriptures, things like that, to start on that path. And every path has a different one depending on the pain that you have.
Well, there's going to be men who are listening that are going to say, well, I don't know if that's really me. I've dealt with that stuff. Like, I don't really know if I need help. And yet it's still manifesting in their lives in tons of different ways, right? So what can they be on the lookout for that says, okay, well, maybe you need help. Maybe you haven't fully healed. Maybe there's still stuff coming up.
Right. Well, the one thing I find out with men, and this is true in my life and it's true in a lot of guys that I deal with, is that we're great to understand when we're physically upset or physically in pain, but we're terrible when it comes to emotional pain. Like, we want to hide it, or we want to ignore it, and we want to power through it. And we've got to understand that if we've lived in this life, we've got pain, especially if we've not dealt with it. And so the first thing that I would say to most men that I talk with, and even myself, is, look, I wake up in the morning. It's beautiful. I'm glad I wake up. But there's things I have to deal with, because I want a life to live that is beautiful, overflowing, and abundant and joyful. Yeah. And I know that there are things in my life that's hurting me from having that. And I started asking questions. What are those things? And
so, Jim, does the emotional stuff also, if you don't deal with that, if you numb yourself to that, does it also show up in how you carry yourself in your physical presence?
Yes, it does. Because growing up, going through a lot of abuse, like when I was 10 years old, I watched my grandfather choke to death.
Oh my gosh.
I've been through a lot of cancers in my family, a lot of things. And I could tell you a whole nother story about all the stuff I've been through. So by the age 15, I was so emotionally numb. I would cut myself. Like, I would literally take a knife and rip it through my hands just to feel pain, because I couldn't feel anything. And what has happened over the years is I so internalized that pain that my body started getting sick and started having all these issues. And then the other thing is
So
that
give us an example of what that looks like. Your body started getting sick and you had issues. What
okay,
happened? Your body started getting sick.
one of the main things is fatigue, like extreme fatigue, because and you don't know why. You're like so sick and you don't know why. My joints would hurt, and I've been through hundreds of medical things. Like I've gotten more blood taken from even most people I know, and they can't find anything wrong. So they found that I have celiac disease, so that's one thing, but everything else they can't find, which tells me it has to be stress related.
Yeah.
And emotional stress is the greatest stress. Emotional and mental stress is the greatest stress we face. And it's also the greatest thing that we avoid because we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
We will deal with physical, but we don't want to deal with the hard things of emotional and mental. And
so walk me through that. What does emotional stress or mental stress look like?
Well, I mean, it's I guess it's in a couple different things. Emotional stress is when you're going through hard things, like maybe you're going through things where you don't have the finances to take care of your family. Maybe you want to be somewhere in life that you thought you would be today. In 2017, you're like, man, I should have been here and I'm nowhere near there. And the stress is killing you because you're comparing what you should have been to where you are.
Yes.
I mean, things like that takes a toll on your body if you don't have a way to get rid of that. And then mentally that causes brain fog. And it causes you to slow down your creativity because now you're shutting down because you're putting all this weight on you because you never dealt with the emotional pain at the beginning.
I love that. It causes brain fog. I've never heard that before. I love that. So like if you're not thinking clearly, if you're not focused, like how does brain fog show up? I love that term.
That's exactly what you're saying is when you're not focusing, when you can't think clearly, when you're becoming more and more forgetful. Like there are normal people who are absent-minded in general, but then when you have all that stress put on you and that emotional pain and that emotional stress, you become more and more absent-minded. And so when you find yourself in those physical things, like your body's hurt and you feel sick, you even nauseous at times, your brain isn't thinking right, you're becoming more and more forgetful, and you're not sick, like you don't have a virus and you don't have some disease. You need to start looking at emotional and mental stresses and find out where is it coming from.
I don't think people give enough weight to emotional and mental stress. Like people just talk about, stress in general, as opposed to breaking it down into those different categories. I think that's really important.
It is because we want to make ourselves believe that we've gotten over something. And if we tell ourselves something long enough and deep enough, we tend to believe it. And the problem is we're believing a lie because the subconscious level, we're still dealing with all the pain we never really got over with, but we've tricked our mind to believe that we've gotten through it.
So how do people get through that and untrip their minds?
Well, again, like we talked about at first, is you got to recognize it. I mean, you really do. And if you're not recognizing the fact that your life could be so much better than it is now, you could have so much more joy, so much more fullness to your life than you do now. And if you're not recognizing that, then number one is you've got to have people in your life who are going to speak honestly to you. Because I think so often we surround ourselves with yes people to make ourselves feel good. Like love company kind of thing. But you need a good person or two in your life who are going to say, man, you're a jerk and here's why. And those are the people that I want to surround myself with because I know they're going to sharpen me. I know I'm going to be better because of it. And I think if you put those honest people around you, if you're not able to see it yourself, something's off. And all of us have that deep sense where we know something's off, but we can't put our finger on it. You get people in your life that says, let me help you with that. Let me help diagnose that with you. And we're not doctors. We don't officially diagnose, but we can all go back to that emotional and mental stress levels and how to do practical things to get through it.
So where do you guys find those type of people? Because what I found a lot of times is that when I ask men, like, who are your closest friends, my clients, specifically in men in my community, they don't have a lot of close friends. And if they do, these men have been friends with them forever. So they already have them kind of pigeonholed in a box of who they think they should be or who they've always known them to be, as opposed to them allowing themselves to be truly who they are, right? They're still living up a facade of, well, I've known this person since 8th grade. They've always known me to be this way. I'm going to keep being that way. And so sometimes I think it's harder for men, if you've been friends, close friends with other guys for a longer period of time, it's harder for them to really show up as themselves and be themselves because they're trying to be the person that these friends think they are. Where do men go and find other men where they can really just be themselves?
You know, I think there was a couple important things that you said there. And number one, I don't think the people that they've been around their whole lives is a bad thing. You know, I know that sometimes we pigeonhole people, but there's a person or two in my life that I've known for like 30 years that sometimes I'll call and I'll be like, how was I when I was this age? Because I have no idea. I don't remember.
Yeah.
You know? I'm like, how was I here? Because this is my perception of it. Can you help me with that? Yeah. I think one is asking those questions because usually we are so complacent because our relationship's so close.
Yeah.
If we don't ask powerful questions, then we never bring it up. The second thing is whatever guy you come around with, whatever, you know, obviously this is a man thing, but this is a general principle, is you've got to give people permission to speak into your life. Because if I don't say, hey, and give that opening, then I won't do that because many people won't violate that wall.
Yeah.
You know, and they're because like, well, I don't want to hurt my friend's feelings. I don't want to make them mad, or even if I do want to make them mad, it's on for other reasons. But you got to be able to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, can you speak to my life here for me?
Mm-hmm.
Verbal permission. You got to have that verbal expectation.
That's interesting because one of my friends told me one time, like, Jessica, maybe people don't always want your advice. Maybe people don't always want you to tell them how you feel. And I said, my friends know that is how I am. They know that they don't need to ask me for my thoughts. They don't need to ask me for my advice. I'm going to give it to them.
Right.
If they don't know that, then they're not really my friend. The friends that I would actually do that with, they know that that's how I am. I said, they're not telling me this just to tell me. Like, right. They're telling me because they want my feedback. They don't need to verbally say, Jessica, so what are your thoughts about blah, blah, blah? They'll tell me the story and they know I'm automatically going to
right.
give my thoughts, my honest thoughts. But I think there are very, very, very few people that actually do that. I think what you're saying is spot on. Most people will just listen, let someone else vent, won't say anything, or they'll say, hey, yeah, you're doing the best you can, or, you know, say like the non-confrontational, like easygoing kind of answer instead of speaking the truth.
Right. You know how I get through that a lot of times? Because I'm like you, I'm a coach by nature, and I'm going to share what my thoughts are, whether you like it or not. But I get through that because people don't want unsolicited advice. Because if they don't ask you for advice or they've not given you a relationship that allows that, it means because they're not ready to deal with it.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So
that's good.
When people are ready to deal with something, they bring it up. So what I say is when I see things, like I'll diagnose things in my head and I'm like, all right, I see this, and I tie it back because I've got like that discernment. I say, can I give you advice in this area? I ask them the question.
Ooh, I like that.
And I say, and most of them be like, well, sure. I've had very few people tell me no. And because when they're ready, they ask me. But if they're not ready, I'll say, hey, can I share this with you? And I'll say the area I want. I won't tell them what I see. Can I share it with you? And of course, their interest gets up and they're like, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good tactic.
And so it opens up the level of conversation that says, I have the right to speak into your life now because I've asked you for permission. It's not unsolicited advice. You gave me permission. Good. Here's what I'm sharing with you. And now I'm going to give you the practical steps on how to get over that. Because I'm a practical guy. So I'm not just like, a lot of people know to share what's, like this is what's wrong. But I'm a practical guy who likes to share hows. Mm-hmm. I want you to take like a next step. I want you to be able to, okay, here's a practical thing you can grab onto so that you can move forward. That's how I like leaving. That's how I write my blog. That's how I do my preaching. It's here's what you do next.
Yes. And that's so important because one of the things that I've heard from men is that they don't get enough of the strategies. They don't know the strategies. They may know in their mind, like something needs to change or, I need to change jobs, I need to change relationships, or I need to deal with whatever, but they don't know the strategy and how to do that.
Right.
And just goes with anything. If you don't know where to look or how to do it or where to find help, I mean, just with anything, that most of the time you'll stay stuck in that and not actually do anything about it because you don't know the how behind it.
Right. And I think to add on to your thing, particularly with men, and I've met some women who have this, but particularly with men, we don't know how to ask. We know what to ask, but we don't know how to ask.
So what does that look like, Jim?
Which one? The how to ask?
Yeah. So give me an example of what to ask looks like, but they don't know how to ask what that looks like.
See, men are good problem solvers. You know, that's why they have problem with women sometimes, because like if their wives come, they're like, women are like, I don't want you to solve my problem. I just want you to listen. Men are natural problem solvers. Like we can look at something, a lot of men, not every man obviously, but we can look at a problem and say here, 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 and here, what needs to be fixed. Okay. But for ourselves, we're going to be like, okay, I know what needs to be fixed. Like whether it be my emotion, my finances and all, but then where we get tripped up is who do I ask and how do I ask? Because there's a lot of pride in men that to even ask and become vulnerable means that I don't know myself. And that somehow I'm more deficient because I can't do this on my own. And I think primarily with men, we've got to get past the pride and past this whole, I have to do it on my own. I have to be this man's man and nobody can help me, and understand that we're here together. You were never created to be alone. And that's men, women, all of us. And we have to ask for help. And it's teaching men that it's okay to be vulnerable with someone, not everyone, but someone, and saying that, you know, hey, can you help me? Those simple words are some of the hardest things for men to even say.
So, you know? Jim, who do they ask and how do they ask?
Well, I think the first thing, the hows is just like that. Hey, can you help me in this area? Be very, very specific. If you have a problem with finances, find somebody who is a mentor, coach, guru, even your Uncle Jed or whoever you're looking at in your family who's like amazing with finances. Don't go to a guy who's broke and you're asking help from finances for this guy.
Right.
You know? The same thing. If I'm, you know, I want to lose some extra weight to get in health for 2017, I'm not going to go to a 400-pound guy. I'm sure he's the nicest guy in the world, but I'm not going to go to him to ask for how to lose weight. I'm going to go to somebody who's done it.
Right.
So one of the things I share with people is find people in the area that you need help. Find people who are doing it already and ask them, because they're going to be the experts. And if they're not experts, they're a little further along the way than you are.
So how do they get past, because really it's just semantics, right? Can you help me, or I need help? How do they get past that? How do they overcome that? How do they get the courage to utter those words?
Well, I think it's number one is to help yourself and understand that to ask those words is one of the most courageous things that you can do as a man. Mm-hmm. Because so often we're so afraid because we'll look less manly.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, I was so numb. I'm not a crier. I have cried probably 5 times in my entire life. I was so numb. And this is something that is coming back to me as I'm getting more healing and things. But the deal is that I think crying is one of the strongest thing men or anybody can do. And it's not a weakness, but we're trained it's a weakness. Mm-hmm. Like asking, we're trained that if I can't do it myself, somehow I'm deficient, I'm inadequate. It's a weakness. Well, it's retraining our brains to think it's not a weakness. It's the greatest strength that we have, is to be able to ask. And if you have to stand in the mirror and tell yourself you are a man and you will ask for help today 400 times before you walk out to ask for help, then do it the 400 times in the mirror to yourself so that you can do it the one time with the person that you're hoping to get help from.
Wow, that's powerful. Do it 400 times in the mirror to yourself so you can do it one time to the person. Because here's the thing, if you don't have the courage to ask for help, you're going to stay exactly where you are.
Absolutely.
Right? Because like you said, we're not meant to do it by ourselves. We're not meant to be here alone. We're not meant to figure it all out just ourselves. We're here to get help from others. And the amazing thing is people want to help. A lot of times they just don't know that you need help.
Right. People want to help. My gosh, people want to help as much as they can, but they don't know how to help, so they don't help.
Oh, yes. And sometimes they just need to have somebody say, hey, can you help me? Yes. What can I help you with?
Absolutely. And it opens up a world of conversation. And through those things, you find out that you may build a relationship that you needed.
Yes.
And by that simple act of courage, you probably have a new relationship that's going to last for years if you build it correctly, and that you needed it in your life to take you from where you are to where you were always meant to be.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the labels that we are living with, the labels that, were given to us as a child and how they play a role in our lives now.
Wow. That's something I've actually been dealing with. When I first talked to you about that particular topic, it was something that has been my whole life, because when I was younger, I was put label after label after label. I was the nerd. I was the person nobody wanted to be with. I was the one who was bullied.
Yeah.
And then, I went through a lot of stuff. And then there was a time where I'm a trumpet player, or used to be a trumpet player and a singer. And then somebody very, very close to my life said, "You have no talent." And it was one of those things where I was going to go on. I was in music education degree and all this stuff. And they said, "You had no talent." And it crushed me, because it was the most influential person in my life.
Wow.
And they did it. They did it because they wanted me to be a doctor. And I have a mind to do that, but it's not what I wanted in my life. And they said that so that I would leave that in order to do what they thought I should do.
Right.
Well, let's fast forward it. I'm 38 years old, and I struggle with the fact that I don't think I'm talented in many things. People tell me all the time, "You're so talented here. You're so talented here." And I'm like, okay. And I just brush it off because I don't believe them. And that was said to me when I was 17 years old, and I'm 38 now, and I'm still struggling with it. We oftentimes will struggle with our labels, because what we don't understand about labels is when a label is put on top of us and we believe it in our heart, we act according to the label, whether we do it or not. We begin to act like it. The same thing is when we label others. We treat people according to the labels we put on them. And it's so depressing, because what it does is a label represents limitations. And so if you allow others to put limitations on you, then what you're doing in essence is what your potential could be in life is now no longer there, because you allowed somebody else to cap your potential.
Yes. That's so true. So how do we work through those labels, or how do we eradicate them, or not, it's not about ignoring them, but how do we walk through them is what I like to say. Because they come back up again, right? And we need to know how to work through them every time they come up.
Right. Well, it's growing through things, because you're not you'll walk through it, but you always grow through it.
Yeah.
That's how I choose to say it. Same thing, but I choose to say grow through it. Here's the deal. Is number one, it always comes back to understanding what label you're operating under. Because you may be operating under one label and I'm operating under another. My one label is no talent. So I struggle with the things I'm producing. I'm like, will people like it? And it created almost like an approval addiction in me when I was and so I had to do everything to get approval. And only now did I recognize that in the last couple of years, and I've been walking through that I don't need people's approval as much as I once did. And one day I'm gonna wake up and I won't need any of y'all's approval.
Yes.
And because I realize I'm creating great content, and it's going to help someone, and that's helped me get past that. It's going to help someone. I don't need to help the millions. Maybe one day I will. I just need to help one person today.
Yes.
And so the first thing is recognizing your label. What did somebody put on you in your life that you're operating under, and that's stilting you. Mine was no talent, and there's hundreds of thousands of labels out there. My wife has a mental illness, and she's always been told different things through her life. So her problem is she's living in so much perfectionism, because she was always told that she was never good enough. She was always told, and so now, because we're faith-based, we're changing our identity, because what we're doing is through the Word of God, we're trying to figure out, what does it say about us? Now, you may not be faith-based. The listeners may not be. But the principles are still the same. Is you find the lie that you believe and you replace it with the truth.
Yes.
And that's the big thing. So what lie have you believed your whole life, and then what truth do you need to start believing to release you from that weight on you?
Wow, that's powerful. And the first thing is, like you said, like the first step is to recognizing what that label is, and then telling yourself the opposite of that label. So if it's I'm not talented, I am talented. I am very talented. And then you keep doing things every day to reiterate how talented you are, not only to yourself, but to others as well. I mean, it's not about external validation, but it's about you also putting it out there in the world to reiterate, yes, I am talented.
Right. And you're building yourself up, and
Yes.
you're building a habit of health in your life, because it's the most healthiest thing you can do is when you have a positive affirmation or outlook on yourself.
Yes.
Because the reality of it, men, women, everybody, if you don't like yourself, you don't love yourself, how in the world are you ever going to love anyone else?
Oh, that's so true. It all starts with you. It all starts with you.
It really
Yes.
does.
Love that. So tell us one thing that people can do to take action today regarding the labels that they are living in and maybe not even recognizing they are.
Well, I think the one thing that they can start today, and this is something that was hard for me, is I looked at the mirror. I went to the mirror one time because I don't like doing this, but I do it. I looked in the mirror and I started doing evaluation, and I started thinking of all the negative words that were over my life. I'm not talented. I'm not smart, which are completely bogus things.
Right.
And I started saying those things out loud because we have a mental conversation in our head. So that what I did is to myself in the mirror, I started saying those things. You're not talented. And man, I felt like junk, and it made me want to change my vernacular. So where I'm not saying those things anymore. So instead of saying I'm not talented, I started saying I'm talented. Instead of saying I'm not smart, man, I'm brilliant.
Yes.
So if I'm not creative, I'm very creative. And I started changing my dynamic of my words in my own self-conversations because I began to speak them out loud.
Yes.
And it sounded stupid to me. In my head, they're the greatest things in the world. When they hit my ears, they were dumb. And I realized how much lies were in them.
Yes.
And I think the first thing you do is you start speaking those negative words out loud to really hear what you really think about yourself.
Yes. And those same things that you're thinking about yourself, I tell clients, like, would you say that to a child? So would you tell a child you're not talented? Would you tell a child, are you stupid? You're dumb? No, you wouldn't.
Right.
So why do you think it's okay to tell yourself that? And it's not.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's great.
Tell us how we can find more out about you and where we can connect with you, Jim.
Well, you can find more about me at Soul Care for the Misfits on Facebook. You can look it up. It's a page. You can also find out, you can find me jimburgoon.org.
And that's BURGOON is his last name.
.org, jimburgoon.org. That's where my blog platform is. That's where I'm doing all my writing. This upcoming year, we've got a lot of great things planned.
Awesome.
Our first book, my wife and I are going to co-write about mental illness because she was diagnosed. So we're going to write that. And I've got a course that I'm trying to create based on what we're talking about, things like this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Jim. Loved everything that you were sharing. If you guys do have labels, remember, those are lies just telling yourself. And what can you do today to change those lies into the truth? Change that label into something positive you're putting out there in the world. Again, I'm Jessica Rector, your host and founder of This Man Thing. You can connect with me at jessica@thismanthing.com. We are helping men be a truer, better version of themselves and standing in their unique power to gain more freedom, confidence, and success. Join our free Facebook group at thismanthing.com/groups. We're having real conversations with men and building much needed community support and camaraderie. And it is a men's only group. Of course, I am in there since I am founder and facilitator of This Man Thing. So I am the only female you'll find in there. And there's not a lot of things out there for men where they're having real conversations about issues and challenges and struggles and being real and being able to talk about topics that are often taboo. So we would love to hear from you and to have you in that group. You can also find out more about us at thismanthing.com. Until next time, have a fabulous, amazing day. Bye-bye.